Welcome viewer for turning into First News Broadcast TV channel where we dispense helpful to political and global awareness on both formers and current affairs, building community news revolutionary commitment of our world. All right, we move on to latest breaking news. Here are today's update. How U.S. President Joe Biden's bid for re-election came to an end. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced that he will end his candidacy for re-election, saying, "It is in the best interest of my party and the country." It follows weeks of intense pressure from fellow Democrats after a faltering debate performance against Republican Donald Trump at the end of June. He said in his statement he would address the nation on the matter next week and gave his endorsement to his Vice President Kamala Harris, saying she should be the Democratic Party's presidential nominee. Democrats hope to use crisis to transform election. Many Democrats are rapidly coalescing around Kamala Harris as their new candidate. It's just over a week since Donald Trump was almost assassinated at a rally in Pennsylvania. And in the last 8 days, the U.S. presidential election has been totally turned on its head. In that short time, Trump has been greeted like a messiah at the Republican National Convention and crowned as the party's candidate, whilst Joe Biden has been reluctantly forced out of the race. Obviously, it was Mr. Biden's disastrous performance in the televised debate last month that caused the panic within the Democratic Party, but their doubts went deeper than that. The president was trailing Trump in the polls before he challenged his opponent to a live televised debate. He only came up with that idea because he urgently needed to reset his campaign. Please follow our live updates after Biden exits White House race. The hope was that getting voters to focus on what Trump could do if he was reelected to the White House would boost support for Mr. Biden. His campaign was based around the idea that if this election was a referendum on Trump, then Mr. Biden would win. But the rambling and incoherent performance from the president immediately tuned this into a referendum on Mr. Biden and his fitness for office. Suddenly, it was an open secret that the president had episodes in which he was far from cogent. The excuses, he had a cold, he had jet lag, were weak and scarcely believable. Savvy Democrats also sensed a potential opportunity, a chance to transform this race and maybe energize voters who were seriously disenchanted with having to make a choice between the same two old men who ran against each other last time. Any contest to select a new candidate will have to be brief. The Democratic National Convention is scheduled to confirm its candidate on August 19th. But 4 weeks of debates, hustings, and town hall events with some of the party's talented and experienced younger candidates could be exciting and attract the attention a new nominee will need. Yet it seems that the party is rapidly coalescing around Vice President Kamala Harris as their new candidate. So many elected representatives, senators, and party grandees are backing her that she may be unassailable. None of the serious contenders who could have challenged her, California Governor Gavin Newsom, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, or Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, are going to put up a fight. As they say in American sports, the fix is in. Democrats have just watched the Republican Party unite around the cult of Donald Trump. Republicans don't just support their nominee, they adore him. The prospect of contrasting Trump's triumphant coronation as his party's candidate with a scrappy fight for the Democratic nomination may seem too risky, even if large sections of the party are less than enthusiastic about Ms. Harris. One Democratic operative told me, a few days before Joe Biden stood down, that Ms. Harris was nothing more than an empty suit who is neither an ideological rudder or a moral compass. But they said they'd get behind her if that's what it took to get Mr. Biden off the ballot. The biggest battle may be over who Ms. Harris picks as her running mate. The key challenge will be to attract the attention of voters in a contest in which they are running against a former president who constantly manages to consume all the oxygen in this election. "Never let a serious crisis go to waste" is a favorite quote from Barack Obama's chief of staff Rahm Emanuel, although he may have borrowed it from Churchill. What he meant was that a crisis can be an opportunity to do things you could not do before. The Democrats have seized the crisis caused by Mr. Biden's debate performance and used it to transform the coming election. It was Mr. Biden himself who said that the result of this election would be crucial in determining the future of American democracy. Democrats contend that Donald Trump poses an existential threat to the nation's democratic institutions. In these circumstances, they have to do anything they can to find a winning candidate. The situation had become dire enough that they forced a sitting president to step aside. But they may not be bold enough to allow an open contest to find the best candidate to replace him. The summary of Kamala Harris gains support of top Democrats after Biden exits race as follows. Many leading Democrats are following Joe Biden's lead by backing Vice President Kamala Harris as the party's new presidential nominee. There are still some key Democrats who have not yet endorsed Harris, including former President Barack Obama and former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. President Biden withdrew from November's election on Sunday after weeks of increasing calls to step aside. Some of his closest aides were only given 1 minute's notice of the decision. Harris says she intends to earn and win the nomination. There's been a reported surge in public donations to the Democrats since Biden dropped out. Biden will remain as president for the rest of the term, but Donald Trump says if he can't run for office, he can't run our country. One of the reportedly most salient points President Biden took into consideration when making his decision to back down from the re-election race was the polling data that increasingly showed Trump at an advantage over him. But how does VP Kamala Harris fare against the Republican nominee? Harris is not the official Democratic candidate, but she announced her candidacy for the Democratic Party nomination right after Biden announced he would step aside, and many heavyweight Democrats have thrown their support behind her. A sample of 4 of the latest polls, which were taken before Harris was announced as a candidate, broadly suggests that while Harris would do slightly better than Biden when faced with Trump, but there is no significant difference. It is important to note that these polls were conducted when Harris was only a theoretical candidate and that opinions may change as the voters become more familiar with her. Okay, viewers. We hope to be back soon on more trending story. Can Kamala Harris beat Donald Trump? Thanks for watching and stay tuned.